Thank you, Janice.
Good evening. I want to first thank Pilar, Danielle, and Denise for sharing with us tonight. We're here tonight to talk about the underfunding of Jersey City's schools and how we need to pledge this year to fix it permanently for Jersey City's children now and in the future. This is not a new problem, nor will it be an easy problem to address. For generations, politicians and policymakers have underinvested in the children of Jersey City. The funding crisis we find ourselves in today was built over decades, but we do not have decades to undo this problem. Every year that we fail to fully fund our public schools is another year that Jersey City students do not receive the thorough and efficient education they are constitutionally entitled to. We must fully and sustainably fund our public schools now. Before I share some of the history of school funding in Jersey City, I want to lift up three recurring themes that are woven through this narrative. They're traps, and we have to guard against them. First, our children have been told again and again by different authorities, the state, the city, the Board of Education, that we can't afford the quality education they deserve and are constitutionally guaranteed. Jersey City schools will just have to learn to do more with less. Second, our history is filled with public officials not taking responsibility for the undeniable funding problems in Jersey City. The finger pointing is standard operating procedure. It's the state's fault, it's the city's fault. Let's be clear. There is a long history of underfunding and plenty of blame to go around. But in order to address the problems and work towards solutions, every responsible party must step up and own their role. Last, the history of the efforts to address the systemic underfunding of Jersey City public schools is marred by quick fixes that are politically expedient rather than long-term sustainable solutions that are more difficult, that would more significantly shift the status quo. Too often, our political leaders think first about their short-term political interests and not about the long-term needs of children. Let's take a brief look at the history of school funding in Jersey City. If you want to learn more, we're happy to share some resources about the way this history has played out for decades. For at least 50 years, Jersey City schools have not been fully and sustainably funded. In the latter half of the 20th century, the New Jersey Supreme Court clearly laid out the city's inability to locally fund the educational needs of its students and prescribed state aid to make up the gaps. But this aid was never fully delivered. State plans for equitable school funding were repeatedly watered down and resulted in school aid being redirected to property tax relief. State lawmakers deflected from their political compromises by pointing at Jersey City and other similar districts, accusing local leaders of wasteful spending. And so Jersey City schools were forced to do more with less. In the past 20 years, as Jersey City grew into the property-rich city it is today, the city's municipal budget grew to match this wealth, enabled by the property tax abatements and the large share of local property taxes that went to the city relative to the schools. In 2020, only 27% of our local property taxes went to the schools, yet the state average was 52%. And while members of the Board of Education correctly point at the fact that the city claims an outsized portion of local property taxes, they do not own the fact that our school tax rate and property tax rate are lower than over 90% of municipalities in New Jersey. While many around the state point to booming Jersey City real estate market, Jersey City students have largely been cut out of the gains of this growth. News articles tout the sale of multi-million-dollar penthouse apartments in buildings that contribute $0 to the local school levy. While thousands of students attend schools without potable water, with holes in walls, broken bathrooms, and ventilation systems that need significant renovations to support safe learning conditions during COVID. The expectation is that efficiencies can be found and schools can certainly manage to do more with less. What does it look like to do more with less? It looks like teaching vacancies being staffed by substitutes rather than refilled, in the anticipation of future layoffs. It looks like vital reading intervention programs being cut. It looks like replacing a stable workforce of unionized janitorial, clerical, and teacher aide positions with lower paid per diem workers. As much as they might try, the schools aren't actually doing more with less. They're just doing less. Who are the children of Jersey City public schools who we keep pushing to somehow get by with less? Over 3,800 of Jersey City's public school children have English as a second language. 3,900 qualify for special education services. 61%, over 16,000 students, qualify for free and reduced lunch, marking them as at risk according to the state funding formula. For far too long, Jersey City schools have been required to meet the greater needs of our children by doing more with less. Back in 1992, the Jersey City superintendent said, "We are losing kids every single day, and we know that we pay later. We pay through the criminal justice system. We pay through the welfare system. We, the taxpayers, are paying all over the place. And if we invested our money earlier, we might offset some of the later costs and problems in our society." Nearly 30 years later, we may use, but the moral and fund our schools and fund our students' futures remains. And the societal cost of trying to do more with less is the same. And not just the moral imperative, but the legal one. We are legally required to provide children with a thorough and efficient education. Pretending that we can do more with less is neither thorough nor efficient. After many years of being constrained by state law in our ability to increase our local school funding, in the past few years, we have made significant progress on this front. Jersey City adopted a payroll tax 2 years ago to offset some of the losses in state aid. We saw real leadership last year when Superintendent Walker proposed and the board approved a school budget for this year with a meaningful increase in the local school levy. We are at a crossroads in Jersey City, and we must choose the path that leads to full, sustainable funding for our public schools. Superintendent Walker must put forth a fully funded budget that meets the needs of the children of Jersey City. The budget needs to be the first step towards sustainable funding for our schools. We cannot rely on one-time aid and stopgap staffing measures. The Board of Education must put children above politics and pass that budget. The state must work to fill in remaining gaps that threaten Jersey City students' right to a thorough and efficient education, such as gaps in infrastructure and school construction. The last time the Jersey City public schools were fully funded, Denise, who we just heard from, was in kindergarten. My own son is in kindergarten this year. I can't help but wonder which potential future for our schools he and his classmates will experience. One in which Jersey City students are forced to continue to do more with less, to try to learn high school science without an actual science teacher, or a future in which children are prioritized and full funding is the expectation. What would fully funded schools look like? We must banish the mindset of doing more with less. We must think expansively and imagine greater for the children of Jersey City. To quote the state Supreme Court in 1990, "Thorough and efficient means more than teaching the skills needed to compete in the labor market, as critically important as that may be. It means being able to fulfill one's role as a citizen, a role that encompasses far more than merely registering to vote. It means the ability to participate fully in society, in the life of one's community, the ability to appreciate music, art, and literature, and the ability to share all of that with friends. To achieve this vision of what education can and should and must be, we need everyone to come together to end the finger pointing, take responsibility, and send the message to the children of Jersey City that they matter by fully and sustainably funding our schools." Thank you.